And so I wanted to check in with Gregory Angelo. He's the national director of the Log Cabin Republicans, which is a gay organization that just happens to be Republican and just happens to be gay. Gregory, how are you, sir? Thanks for being with us tonight.
I'm doing all right, Paul. Thanks for having me on the show.
So what are the fears that you are hearing, and what can you tell? What do you tell people when they say to you, Greg, I'm really afraid that we're going to be discriminated? What are they telling you, and what do you tell them?
Well, I mean, the first thing I do before I say anything is roll my eyes, right? Because regardless of how one feels about Donald Trump, there are objective truths in regard to the statements he's made, the positions he's taken, and the actions he has taken over the course of his career and during his presidential campaign in support of the LGBT community. I mean, here we have a man who, just days after he was elected, said that same-sex marriage and the Supreme Court's 2015 ruling making same-sex marriage a reality in all 50 states was settled law and the law of the land. Here you have a man who, for the first time in the history of the United States, spoke up at the Republican convention and specifically reached out to the LGBT community. And here you have a man who, and this is something that Democrats are not fond of acknowledging, enters the White House as the first president of any political party to have already attended a same-sex wedding himself, and who believes that marriage equality is the law of the land. George W. Bush didn't believe that when he entered office. Bill Clinton didn't believe that when he entered office, and Barack Obama didn't believe that when he entered office. So what I tell folks, on the LGBT left is, I don't tell them anything. I ask them, what is it that you're so concerned about? Here we have someone who has said during the campaign he would be a, quote, real friend to the LGBT community. He said that, by the way, the day after the horrendous terrorist massacre at the gay nightclub Pulse in Orlando, where radical Islamic terrorists took 49 lives from the LGBT community and our allies. So, I think we have someone in Donald Trump who can be and will be a friend. He certainly promised as much, and I hope he delivers.
So why do you think that there is this belief? It's the same belief, I guess, that comes from every other group that opposes him, that whether it's he's going to trample, he's going to tear up the Constitution, he's a sociopath, he's a Nazi. Where do you think all of this fear is coming from?
Partisan politics. I mean, the answer to that question is very simple. People ask me, well, how can you be gay and a Republican? And, there are numerous reasons. I mean, I'm not a single issue voter. I don't subscribe to groupthink. I believe in individual liberty. I believe in free markets, all of that stuff. But also, when you put all of your faith into a single political party as a community, this being the Democratic Party that, is not only in the tank for the Democratic Party, but the Democratic candidate for president, your fate is to be ignored by one political party and taken for granted by the other, taken for granted by the Democrats. So where does this come from? The fact that, from the outset, all of these LGBT Democrats were in the tank for Hillary Clinton. They were demonizing Donald Trump from the start. They were literally conjuring up misinformation and outright fabrications in order to demonize Donald Trump. And after you do that, after you don't do any outreach to the Republican candidate for president, the man who ultimately became president, you have no choice then but to continue down your road of demonization. And fortunately, I think, within Trump's first 100 days, we're going to see the wheels fall off of this fear train that the LGBT left has been pushing for so long.
I wanted to touch base with you on one other subject, and I think that, and I know this isn't something that you deal with on an everyday basis, but the transgender issues are one of the reasons there was this push towards Trump, is because we become so politically correct that we don't even know which bathroom people are supposed to use anymore. The whole transgender issue, I think is going to have to be, gender is going to have to be decided by the courts, because right now it's kind of a self-identity thing. It's a self-identification. If I choose to be a woman right now, if I say, okay, I'm a woman now, I guess I'm a woman. I mean, I don't know. I could alternate, from being a man or a woman from one day to the next, I guess. Do you see that there's ever going to be a time when we're going to need a legal definition for gender?
Paul, what kind of a world are we living in where gender is something that needs to be decided by the courts?
Well, but you know what I mean? Just like
No, I do. I mean, I'm saying that because I agree with you, right?
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is something. Do we really need legal precedent in order to establish gender? I mean, gender is something that has basically been common sense for millennia. Really. But I would say this. A lot of the outcry that you're hearing, in the aftermath of North Carolina's passage of HB2 legislation, by the way, which log cabin Republicans has consistently opposed, and this outcry from the LGBT left saying that you need statutes to allow restroom access. I think it's time for people on all sides to take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize transgender individuals, people who change their sex over the course of their lives, is not new. This is not something that sprang up right after the Supreme Court's marriage ruling. In fact, to my knowledge, transgender individuals have been using the restroom they identify with for ages. Similarly, we have not needed legislation that has been pushed by Republicans that is entering into one of the most intimate places that anyone can imagine and regulating it. I mean, are we going to have bathroom attendants who check people's IDs before they go to the restroom?
Maybe even worse than that. Might want to see a little more intimate identification.
Is that really where we want to go as conservatives and as Republicans, to have junk monitors? I really hope not. I mean, and I would say this: to your female listeners, aren't lines at women's restrooms long enough? Do we really need to have the added layer of someone checking IDs and who knows what else in order to use the restroom? I don't think so. I mean, let's try to find solutions that do not involve government to this, and I think we'd be just fine.
That's a very interesting perspective, and certainly comments, and I've been talking with some other folks, and you have a unique perspective, because I know that some of the people that you, some of the other organizations you deal with, are extremely far to the left. Have you ever seen the kind of vitriol against a president? I know that there was a lot of hatred, a lot of racism, a lot of mean, ugly things that were said about Barack Obama, but that, I hope it was from a limited part of our society that was racist and truly bigoted. But this feeling that I'm seeing now, it seems very widespread, where there is a widespread feeling of sincere and utter contempt for Donald Trump and anybody who thinks anything like him.
That's right. And no, I haven't seen anything like this before. There are Republicans who are the loyal opposition to President Obama during the 8 years that he was in office. I certainly wasn't happy with the 2008 election outcome. I was not happy with the 2012 election outcome. But I and millions of other Republicans and center-right individuals did not take to the streets shouting "not my president" and saying that Barack Obama's presidency was illegitimate. There were some,
and Donald Trump. Right. Donald Trump was in the, he was in the birther movement there, and we know that that was probably started by Hillary, by the way. But nevertheless, Trump definitely carried that torch for a while.
Donald Trump was definitely questioning that, yeah, most definitely. But there weren't widespread protests that were challenging free and fair elections that took place in the United States. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump actually ran and decided to run in 2016, is because he felt that he was the only one that could actually run and win. But beyond that, you look at the Women's March that took place over the weekend, and I understand people have a right to protest and they have a right to free speech and express it. Go for it. But there was a grand irony in the fact that all of these people were protesting a president that they felt did not represent them, and it was too vulgar, was too crude, was too profane. Paul, let me tell you, I don't know if you saw the photos, but I saw some of the most vulgar, profane, and crude signs that I have ever seen in my life at that event.
And I've tried to point that out to people without being too critical, because I know there were a lot of very good, very concerned people there, and some wonderful people that took part in the Women's March. But when at first I thought, hey, this is great, more power to them. And then when I heard Madonna and Ashley Judd, I was like, oh my God, this is that over the top hatred, that this fiery hatred that cannot be, extinguished by anything.
But I'd respectfully say, though, I don't understand the people who were protesting. I don't understand what they were fearful of. I don't understand what they were fighting. Donald Trump has been in office, barely 5 days at this point. We just finished the second full day of work that he had as president of the United States. And for all these people, on the left, that, especially coming from my perspective, the LGBT left, that said Donald Trump is going to be rounding up gay people and Mike Pence is going to be giving them electroshock therapy to change them from gay to straight. Well, let me say this. There's been no knock on my door to date from anyone saying, pack up your things, Gregory. It's time to go to the camp and be reindoctrinated.
Well, it's early in the week, Greg. It's early in the week.
Well, I'd be willing to bet that knock on the door is still not going to come. Let's just, what I tell folks on the left, regardless of the sexual orientation, gender identity, whatever the case is, you were so fond of taking every word Hillary Clinton said on the campaign as gospel, except the last thing she said, which was that Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. We'd all do well. And I can't believe I'm going on record on your show and saying this. We'd all do well if we took Hillary Clinton's words to heart, right? At least in that regard, and gave Donald Trump a chance to govern. Look, if you don't like the way he governs, if you don't like the things he does, protest the policies, protest the legislation that he's signing. But right now, there is no policy that's attacking Americans. There is no legislation that he's supporting and has signed that is attacking Americans. I think this country owes him the deference to govern at the very least.
Gregory Angelo, the National Director of the Log Cabin Republicans, we sure do appreciate your time here on Larry Connors USA. Have a great day.
You too, man. All the best to you and your listeners.
Thank you, sir. Interesting perspective. How hard is it to be a gay Republican? And much less to be a gay Republican who is the head of one of the largest gay organizations in the country, and to try to be positive toward Donald Trump when everybody that you're associated with is telling you that he is Satan. I admire Gregory Angelo, and I appreciate that he was on the program with us tonight.